Welcome to the Art Colony, a podcast about art and art history in Provincetown. My name is Gaston Lacombe. Before we start, I need to do a bit of admin. I have been approached a few times recently by listeners who asked if it's possible to sponsor the podcast or advertise with us. First of all, thank you so much for listening. And to answer your question, yes, both the producer and I work on this completely for free, and a bit of support would not hurt. So if you're interested in sponsoring the Art Colony podcast or advertising with us, especially if you're a local Provincetown business, please get in touch with us at theartcolonypodcast@gmail.com. So all one word, no spaces, theartcolonypodcast@gmail.com. Or you can also contact us through our Instagram account, same thing, at the Art Colony Podcast, and you can also just follow us while you're there. Also, if you're not a business but would still like to support us, we have set up an account at buymeacoffee.com. You can go there and leave us a tip. No commitment, no obligations, no monthly membership. You can just leave us a tip in the amount of your choice and whenever you feel like it. You can do this at buymeacoffee.com/the Art Colony Podcast. Again, with no spaces, buymeacoffee.com/the Art Colony Podcast. Or you can just go to buymeacoffee.com and do a search for the Art Colony Podcast. And thank you all for your support. Now, on with the show. Here in our art colony at the tip of Cape Cod, we often hear that something was created as a love letter to Provincetown. There's a lot of love for our little town, and artists express it in multiple ways. In painting, in writing, in fashion, in plays, many different ways. But once in a while, someone comes around who creates not just a love letter to Provincetown, but a whole love novel, or even a whole love encyclopedia. Or in the case of our guest today, he wrote a love musical to Provincetown, something that, I think, had never been done before. Our guest today is a musician, a singer, an actor, an entertainer, and an all-around wonderful guy. So let's welcome to the Art Colony Podcast, Jonathan Richardson.
Yay, thank you.
How are you?
Oh, I'm great. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I'm very happy to see you here. So tell us, who is Jonathan Richardson?
I am a Provincetown resident. I'm a year-round resident. I've been here full-time since 2017. And I'm a musician and a writer. In the last few years, I've been working on this show for about 6-7 years, and then very intensely for about 3 years. I joined those two things together of being a musician and a writer, and that's sort of how the Jack of Hearts Club was born.
We'll get to the Jack of Hearts Club. There's a lot to talk about there. But first, let's start at the very beginning.
Yay.
A very good place to start.
A very good place to start.
Where does Jonathan Richardson come from?
I grew up in the Twin Cities outside of Minneapolis in St. Louis Park, Minnesota. And I went to public school, and I was a musician probably that's my first memory was playing piano. My older sister played piano. I have one older sister, Molly, and my parents love music and they love theater. I started playing, I don't even remember when I started playing piano, probably around 5. I mostly just wanted to play so I could be better than my sister.
Okay.
And like that was it. And then in 3rd grade, I added trumpet. In college, I added guitar. So I play piano, trumpet, and guitar. But singing is, I think, my favorite of all. I love to sing, and I've studied voice as well. And Minneapolis has a really amazing. Minneapolis and St. Paul has an incredible theater community, like a very rich regional theater, professional theater community. And so when I was growing up, I started auditioning for shows. And my first show I was ever in was at the Guthrie Theater in Minneapolis. I did A Christmas Carol 2 years in a row.
Which role?
I was young Ebenezer.
Okay.
I know they're doing Christmas Carol at the theater right now. I'm going to go see it on Sunday.
I just went a few days ago.
Oh, I'm excited. Yeah. And I can't wait. So I was in Christmas Carol for 2 years, and then I did a bunch of theater, professional theater in the Twin Cities, and they used to my parents would come to my school, pick me up in the middle of the day. I would go to the theater to do matinees and then come back to school. And if I missed whatever I missed, I would have to sort of make up. But I did that until high school. And then in high school, I went to St. Louis Park High School and did theater all through high school and fell in love with musicals. I'm like obsessed with musicals and always have been, I think. And then went to college in Iowa, did a little bit of musical theater there, but then fully transitioned over to music, and I fell in love with music. I majored in history in college, and but I really became obsessed with choral music. There was a great choir where I went, Grinnell College, and I had an amazing choir director. So I really got into choral music and became a big nerd. Like everything I loved about musical theater, I think my new obsession became choral music for a while. That was my path, and then I moved to Boston in 2010, and I worked at a consulting firm for 7 years, and I did work as like a headhunter and a recruiter. And
That's not very musical.
No, it wasn't at all. It was I was recruited out of college by a firm in Boston to be a headhunter. And I did that until I got accepted to graduate school in music. And I went to New England Conservatory in Boston. And I was there full time for 2 years. And I studied Baroque music. So Johann Sebastian Bach and a little bit of Handel, but mostly Bach. And then moved to Provincetown as soon as I got my master's in music history from NEC. And I came to Provincetown and started at Tin Pan Alley. When I came here to Provincetown, I was leaving behind a kind of career trajectory at that company. And everyone thought I was insane to leave that firm to play piano in like a small cocktail bar. Tin Pan Alley is amazing, but no one really understood that decision. But it just happened, and it ended up working out really well. And I'm just so grateful for all the things that led me here to Provincetown.
Well, I've always wondered, how can you keep all these songs in your head? And from your description, you've been practicing all your life. You've been memorizing these lyrics all your life.
Oh, totally.
I've always been so impressed that whenever I see you at the piano, people come up and say, play this song, and you don't even blink. You start playing it. You know all the lyrics, you know all the music. And I always wonder, how does he keep all this music in his head?
I think it comes from starting piano at such a young age. And I had a teacher who, as he was teaching me how to play, he said that I didn't really know a piece of music until I could play it and have a conversation with him at the same time. So in order to test whether or not I had actually learned a piece he had assigned to me, his name was Joe Alley. And so I would play it on the piano, and then he would say, like, what did you eat for lunch today? And I would have to be like, chicken. I don't know. Like I would have to answer his questions as I was playing piano. And I'm pretty sure that was a big part of my training to do what I do at the piano bar, because piano bar is so hectic and
It is.
There's so much going on. And so
Yeah.
I just have to keep playing and never stop, because if you stop and there's ever silence, people like check their phones or they leave, or there's so much to do in Provincetown. So
Yeah.
I try and keep playing.
But we're going to talk about the piano bar because that's a very interesting thing. But first of all, you said you came in 2017 to Provincetown?
Yep.
What brought you here? Was there a specific reason you came?
I had always loved P-Town. So when I was living in Boston from 2010 until 2017, this was where I came on weekends. And so I would leave Isaacson Miller, the firm that I was at, on Friday at 5, and I would catch the ferry. And then I would come back on the Sunday evening ferry to Boston, like all summer with like all my gay friends from Boston. That's just what we did. So I was obviously, I had a lot more fun then than I do now, because like
It's different when you visit.
yeah, when you visit, it's like you know, a gay amusement park, and so I wouldn't do half of the silly things that I did when I used to come. And then I started dating a guy named Jay who lives in Provincetown, and he was working on rehabbing a house. This was like 2013, so a few years after I moved to Boston. And uh, through Jay, I would come here in the off season. So we would come down here on weekends in the off season, and I fell in love with the off season through that experience. So we dated for a few years, and he's still a good friend. But through Jay, I came to really like fall in love with the town for what it had to offer outside of like the weekend summer silliness. And then I got a job up in Agunquit, Maine. My first piano bar job was in Agunquit, Maine at the Front Porch, which is a very classic old school sing along piano bar. When Jack Kelly and Paul Melanson heard that I'd been hired at the Front Porch, they offered me a job at Tin Pan Alley, and I didn't even have to audition. They just said like, "Oh, well, if you're playing at the Front Porch, like that's a good vibe for us here at Tin Pan Alley." So April, I was finishing my master's degree, and in April of 2017, I came down for my first gig. It was on a Sunday night in April at like 9 o'clock, and it was like Dan McGee was there, and like Bob Williams and like 4 other people, and no one was listening to me, but that was fine. It was just my first. I don't even know what I played. I didn't have any. I had to play for 3 hours,
Mhm.
and I look back on that time, and I only knew like 6 songs. So I don't know what I did those early piano bar shows, but you know, I that started my gig, and I would go between Provincetown and Agunquit every week, do a few gigs down here, drive up to Agunquit, do a few gigs up there, and then eventually just found a home here in Provincetown, and then that fall/winter of 2017, I just decided to make this my home.
Anybody who's been to Provincetown, and especially in the evening, knows that the piano bar is very much part of the audio space of Provincetown.
Yeah.
If you walk up and down the street, especially downtown, because there's Tin Pan Alley and there's also the Crown and Anchor, they have these piano bar sounds coming out of them. And I remember my first few times here, it was just so interesting that you'd have blockages on the street because people were stopping on the street listening in. So it's a really fun part of the evening life here in Provincetown.
Hmm.
Tell us some of the stories, because you've been doing this now for quite a few years. So you have a lot of experience behind the piano in all these bars. What is it like?
It is a joy, and it can also be chaotic. So to like share the context, I do a show for 2 hours, and it's free, and anyone can come in. It's not in like a theater space. It's more in like a place where they are serving meals, and it's really first come, first serve. I never have a set list. So I just walk in with just some idea of what people will want, and then based on who's there, I try and read the room, figure out what the vibe is that they're looking for. Sometimes if it's like only gay guys, then we're gonna do lots of show tunes.
Mhm.
But if it's a more mixed crowd, then I'll go for more like Elton John and Dolly Parton, and more like pop, like classic Americana, like 60s and 70s fun stuff with some show tunes thrown in. And if it's younger, I'll do like some Taylor Swift or some Chappell Roan or whatever. But my favorite is Broadway and Dolly Parton and Elton John. And some of my favorite stories. One night last June, a guy had way too much to drink, and there was this white pillar near my piano, and he started pole dancing on the pillar when I was playing like Rocket Man by Elton John, which is not a good like pole dancing song.
No, it's not.
It was very bad, and everyone was just staring at him, and everyone's looking at me, looking at him, and I'm just like, he's gonna fall. Like, this is not good. And they kind of the audience wants to make sure that I feel okay, but I want them to feel okay. And so I kind of let him do it for a few minutes, and I kind of said to the audience, I was like, he won't remember this tomorrow. So let's let him have his fun for a minute. One of my favorite nights was at Tin Pan Alley, like my first summer. And it was very crowded, and there were 2 guys sitting really close to the piano, and they were a couple, a beautiful couple. And they were having a great time. But then at some point, like late into the night, they got in a fight. They were so mad at each other, but everyone was looking at me. And so no one could tell that these two men were fighting because no one could kind of see. So at the point in my songs that were the loudest, these two were like yelling at each other. And then when I would finish a song, they would turn away from each other so that no one could tell that they were fighting. So I have the best seat in the house because I get to just see everything crazy going on. And after the show was over, I was like, did you see those guys? They were so mad at each other. And they were like, what are you talking? No one could see them. So I love being able to, I don't miss much. I'm spending my whole time just scanning the whole audience, making sure everyone like feels engaged. And, if this table over here is not engaged, I want to figure out a way to kind of get them a part of it. It feels like a kind of community event. And I try and make sure it feels like a bunch of friends are just singing in their living room together.
And you have to have quite the sense of humor to do this. And you're a very funny guy.
Thank you.
Because I've seen some performers get really angry behind the piano because you're like, they would say like, I'm here working and nobody's paying attention to me and nobody's listening. So you should respect me. But I've never seen you do that because people do listen to you. People are paying attention to you and you're entertaining and funny. So you have a great talent for that.
Well, that wasn't always the case. In my first few years, and that's why I really like to make sure I stay really close to the new people who are starting out in town and some of the folks who are in their first couple of seasons, because it took me 4 years before people paid attention to me. Like every show in my first few summers, I would just focus on converting like 2 people to become fans of mine. And that was a win over 3 hours. Because in this performance environment, no one has bought a ticket to see me. It's a free show. If they had bought a ticket and they were being loud and disruptive and not paying attention, then I would, first of all, other people in the expectation is so different. This is a free show and people are allowed to sit and talk and have their conversations and this kind of thing. And I think that you can really lose an audience by demanding that they listen to you or getting angry that they're not listening to you. And so what I often say to performers who are just starting out and trying to build their audience is say, do this work because you love to sing and you love to play piano and you love to entertain. And every song you play, you love. And you're doing it for yourself. And the vibe that you want to kind of communicate to this room is one of like, I am just here and I love doing this, and you are welcome to listen if you want. And I obviously would love it if you did. But if no one pays attention, the worst thing you can do is raise your volume because they're much louder.
Mm-hmm.
So I always tell people if people are being way too loud, I will often tell younger performers like, sing more quietly, and then they'll start to get quieter too. And David Drake told me this years ago, which is that in cabaret, which is essentially what piano bar is, in cabaret, you want to make the audience come to you. You don't go to them. You don't want to approach it from this thing of like me, like that's kind of the temptation. But instead, the idea is like, I'm kind of just a weird piano player sitting up here, and if you want to listen, I'd love it because I've got weird stories to tell you. Like it's that vibe usually is more conducive, but it's frustrating. And I've seen piano bar players, I've seen plenty of performers get very angry because they feel disrespected. And I've seen a lot of behavior from audience members that is like absolutely not cool.
Yeah, that's what I was going to head towards in my next question. You deal with a lot of drunken people
Right.
who are here for the party. So how do you handle these unpleasant situations?
I try to let the security at the venue deal with it. There has been 1 or 2 times, really only 1 or 2 times, where I've looked at someone and been like, you have to be quiet. And I say it just once, but I really will do everything in my power to not let it get to that point, or I will just try and tune them out as best I can and just say, like, look, they're here and they're drunk. This is what they're supposed to be doing in Provincetown. They are not being malicious to me. But there have been 1 or 2 times, like last summer, at one point, there was someone sitting to my left, like yelling, having a conversation where it really wasn't, they weren't just like quietly chatting. And I just couldn't hear myself. And it was so distracting. So I did turn and I looked at them and I just went like that kind of.
Hmm.
And this person really got the message, and but I hated it. And I also think that the audience, most of the rest, the audience doesn't really know. If I don't act annoyed, they won't think. But as soon as I like blow up at that person, it does put a chill on the audience, and the audience feels like I'm not having a good time. And if I'm not having a good time, they're uncomfortable. So I try my best. But if someone's being dangerous, like if they're dancing out of control or falling over on people, or if it looks like there's going to be a physical issue, what I try and do is just call security and have them vacate.
Now, at the other end of the spectrum, Provincetown attracts a lot of celebrities, a lot of famous people, and often we hear stories of them popping up in these piano bars and picking up the microphone and starting to sing. So, have you ever had an encounter with one of your heroes, one of your, celebrity crushes in these situations?
I love Marilyn May,
Hmm.
and she's come up and sang for me a few times. Yeah, that's really the one that comes to mind. I mean, when I've had celebrities in my audience, they are off the clock. People who are full-time performers obviously do love to perform, but they also just love to like hang out with their friends and not have to like be in the spotlight. A lot of famous people are shy. And so I have seen people in the audience and I can sort of tell if they want me to acknowledge them, because sometimes if I acknowledge a super famous person, people will rush over to them, and maybe they're there with their friends, but the Crown and Acre attracts a lot of famous people, and so I usually will see them and I just kind of give them a little wave. And with Marilyn May, she's sung for me. I've played for her maybe like 4 times. And that is just a treat. She's a legend and she's focused on teaching. Like she wants to be there to listen, and I've asked her for notes, and and so she is someone where when she's there, I want her to come up and sing. But like Varla Jean and Dina Martina, and Tina Burner and Thirsty, like I'll have Thirsty up a lot because she just makes me laugh. But a lot of those queens like have just finished their show and they want to drink and they want to just sit with their friends and chill, and they don't want me being like, get up here and sing a song, like, so I can usually read the vibe pretty well. And also I'm getting less and less comfortable because if I haven't rehearsed with someone, I don't, and everyone has a camera now. And so everyone's going to pull out their video and video it. And if it's a mess, that's what goes out into the world. And so I'm often kind of like, if I haven't rehearsed with you, I don't really want to play. I'm not a good accompanist.
Yeah. Now, since this is a podcast about art history as well, we can also talk about very recent history. And you did something during the pandemic, which I hope will be remembered for generations.
Mm.
You did an online piano bar to keep the music going while everything was shut down. And that was such a fantastic experience to tune in to John during the pandemic. Tell us about that.
Well, thank you. That was a really special community that grew in really the first day of lockdown. I just turned on Facebook Live and sat at my piano and played for an hour. And it had such a wild response. And everyone was writing comments and requesting songs. So for the first few months of lockdown at 5 o'clock every day, I played piano for an hour, and whatever anyone would write in the comments, I would just play whatever song they requested. And it created this like little micro social media network, basically a virtual piano bar. And We expanded it out. It just became such a special little thing, and I would look forward to it every day, and folks and still every performance I do, someone will walk up to me and talk about Virtual Piano Bar. And it was just good for me to kind of keep my own performance practice going. And I learned a lot of new songs, and I am so grateful for it. And just a few days ago, I went home to Minnesota, and a woman who watched Virtual Piano Bar, really religiously asked me to come over and play songs that I used to play on Virtual Piano Bar at her piano. So I went over to her house and played like 4 or 5 songs that I always did on Virtual Piano Bar for her, and we talked all about it, and it was really special. Started to taper off like 2 years in, but there's still one of the shows from it, Bob Egan, who we put on the platform, is still doing Virtual Piano Bar every week, and it's wonderful to
Wow.
see that. Like, I love seeing that still going on.
Yeah, well, during the lockdowns and during the moments where we couldn't really socialize, it was so important to have some sort of connection to the outside world. And it was just so amazing to turn John on and listen to what he's singing today and listen to the jokes and the banter. It really made us feel like we were still part of a community. And I mean, that's fantastic. I hope we still talk about it in generations from now.
Oh, well, those videos are all still online. I mean, one thing about those videos is like, part of it was a very boozy experience where like, I don't drink anymore, but during those years I definitely did. And I had like bourbon. And I've seen a few of those videos that have kind of popped up. And by the end of the show, I'd had like quite a bit of bourbon. And I look at them and be like, oh, John, slow down a little bit. Like by the time I was like at my finale, I mean, that was funny. In my first few years of Piano Bar, I had to have a Manhattan before my show. And I would drink during my shows because I was so nervous. And it's not very natural to sit at a piano with only like half of the room listening to you. So in those early years, booze was definitely my friend, just to get over the hump of nerves. And fortunately, that's not so much of the experience anymore for me. And I'm a little more lucid when the show ends now.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, along with Piano Bar, you also have multiple shows going on in town. I remember a few years ago you did a whole Dolly Parton series. That was fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
And you have something coming up right now in December, right?
Yeah. So
for those of you listening in real time.
Yeah. Well, I have one of my favorite shows of the year is coming up a week from Thursday the 4th at 8:30 is Sound of Music sing-along.
Oh, okay. Yes, I was about to ask also. Are you going to do the Sound of Music sing-along this year?
Yep.
So December 4th.
Yep, Thursday night. And that is really kind of a towny event.
It's fantastic.
You're so sweet. It's very fun. Not a lot of people from out of town. It's always the Thursday before Holly Folly, and it is packed with basically only townies because not a lot of people are in town yet for Holly Folly that night. But that is a 2-hour one-man show of the Sound of Music. And I do all the characters.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone sings along to every song.
Everybody belts along.
Everyone belts along. That is my most joyous. And my only homework to get ready for that show is to just watch The Sound of Music, which is the best. And I've loved that movie. It's the movie, we do the movie version of it. But that movie has been my go-to for my whole life, and I know every line. So I kind of
So do I.
Yeah, I know. We all do. So it is like a love fest about all of us, how much we all love The Sound of Music. And I did that first on Virtual Piano Bar in one of the early months of lockdown. And what was funny was we were like 90 minutes into that show, and she was like still at the Abbey, which was horrible. I was like, oh no, I better hurry up. It was really long, but it was good. And so then now I do the real version, like in-person version at the Crown and Anchor. So that's on Thursday.
So Thursday, December 4th, 7:30.
8:30.
8:30 at the Crown and Anchor.
Yep. And I do costumes.
Oh, you have costumes too?
Yeah, 2
Okay.
costumes.
Oh, good.
I'm excited.
And then you have another show on December 5th.
Yeah, so the next 3 days, 5th, 6th, and 7th, are the first 3 Bing Crosby shows. And I love Bing Crosby. I always have. And so 3 years ago, I put together this show and brought some friends of mine along with me. And it's an hour-long tribute to his Christmas music. And so it has all the Bing Crosby Christmas hits. And it's sort of like a nostalgic, heartwarming journey through Bing Crosby Christmas songs. And I have Peter Donnelly in it with me and Dan McGee. Both have gorgeous voices. And this year I've invited Peter Toto.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, to join for a few songs, who also is a brilliant musician. So it'll be the 3 Saturdays of Holly Folly, and then the next 2 Saturdays as well. Which I think, no, the 13th and the 20th.
Mm-hmm.
And then lastly, I'm doing a few of my just normal piano bar shows this coming Friday at 8 o'clock, so the 28th. And then 2 Fridays from then Friday the 19th, all at 8 o'clock at the Crown and Anchor.
So the Sound of Music is not a ticketed event.
No.
But Bing Crosby is.
Bing Crosby, you
So
need
to
tickets.
get tickets, you go to onlyatthecrown.com.
Correct.
And you can get tickets for the Bing Crosby show all through December.
That's right. And the first 2, the Friday and Saturday shows, only have about 20 tickets left apiece. And then there are more tickets for that Sunday show. And then the other 2 are selling well as well. This was selling tickets for me was always traditionally a challenge because I do a free show. So in my first few years at Provincetown, it was always challenge. I had to do a lot of barking. I had to go around town really trying to get people to come to my shows that were ticketed because they were just used to walking into a piano bar and seeing me. Then when I announced the Bing Crosby show 3 years ago, tickets just moved, which was my first time that had ever happened. And now these Bing shows, they really sell.
Well,
I don't have to do much.
They're so warm.
Yeah.
You go there and you feel so cozy. Especially because of the Bing Crosby voice that you do. Because you put the microphone right in your mouth.
Exactly. Well, yeah, I try and lead with kindness. I think kindness is the first quality that I try to embody when I'm performing. Maybe that's why I have a really hard time yelling at disruptive people. The world is so full of cruelty and open bullying that I think warmth and kindness are my favorite qualities. And Dolly Parton, I think I learned that from Dolly Parton. I think she leads with kindness and love and a sense of embrace and a sense of welcoming people into the space. And I remember when I saw Dolly Parton perform for the first time in Boston, she walked on stage, everyone lost their mind. Everyone was so excited to see her. And she looked at the audience and she said, all of you paid really good money. Money is precious and you paid money to see me. So for the next 2 hours, it's my job to make sure you have a really good time. That is, I think, my North Star as a performer. That someone who is as iconic as Dolly Parton looked at the audience and said, I have a job to do. You paid money to see me. I think I thought that someone at that level would just kind of approach the work from a perspective of you're so lucky to be in my presence. And that's not what she did. She did the opposite of that. She was like, I want to make sure that your money feels like it was worth it. And I think about that. I hope my performances with that. If someone comes out to see me, I want to make sure I give back a good experience.
We have to now get to the main story because what's going on in your life right now is incredible. You wrote this musical called
The Jack of Hearts Club.
And it was playing at the Provincetown Theater this fall. Every single show was sold out. It was a complete sensation. So we had to talk about this. This is a big deal. So Jack of Hearts Club, where do we start with this? How did this come in your mind? What's the process behind it?
Yeah, well, I had mentioned that I have always been in love with musicals, obviously Sound of Music, but I feel like I've been a student of musical theater from my earliest memories. Those were the first. I remember listening to Annie when I was a little gay kid, and Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, and my sister and I would just like dance in the living room to these songs. So this was always a big part of my life. And as I started studying the kind of craft of musical theater, the starting point of pretty much every musical, the problem that you have to solve is, why are these characters breaking into song? And if you don't have that figured out from the outset, then it's going to be a real challenging situation. So in my first season in Provincetown in 2017, I realized everyone at the piano bar was breaking into song all the time. And so I figured that it would be very natural to set a musical inside of my experiences in the piano bar. So the first iteration of Jack of Hearts was like me, the piano player at the piano bar, having an insane crush on a bartender who was straight, but I hoped was gay. Like that was I was like, I'll write a musical about that.
Mm-hmm.
That little nugget evolved. So for a few years, Jack of Hearts was set in a piano bar in Provincetown in the current, like a contemporary story. And someone gave me really good advice, which was that having it set in the modern times would create a lot of people arguing with me about like, well, that's not the Provincetown that I experience,
Oh, yeah, we hear that a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
Like if I said it in 2025, I would get a lot of feedback about, well, you didn't capture the Provincetown that I understand. So I decided to set it in the past, and I'm really obsessed with LGBTQ history. Always have been. I was a history major in college. I got my master's degree in history.
So do I. I have a BA and MA in history too.
You did
Look at
that
that. Yeah.
Smithsonian.
High five.
Yeah, high five. You worked at the Smithsonian on that archive.
I did work there. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Thank you.
I'm like obsessed with that. I must have been. I was loving hearing about that on a previous. You talked to Delta about that, or on the podcast with Delta Miles.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love queer history. I was very cognizant of the fact that when stories are told about our community before Stonewall, they are 98% of them end in terrible tragedy for the characters. And most of those narratives revolve around the trauma of being gay in a very oppressive society. And that those stories lead to these kind of liberation narratives, because then Stonewall comes, and then, gay marriage comes, and we end up here. So I wanted to tell a story that didn't involve identity-based trauma, because I started finding all these photographs of gay men and women in Provincetown from the 50s and 60s that really messed with my idea of how gay people behaved in those times, because these photographs could have been taken like this year. It was just lots of black and white photographs of gay people being absurdly gay with big smiles on their faces, like arm around each other, smiling for the camera, like mugging for the camera out on Boy Beach. And that just captured my imagination and captured my attention for 7 years, because I was like, these people in these photographs have to have their story told, and likely they had a lot of very fun nights. I started crafting this musical with that as my kind of North Star, where I was going to write a musical where gay people from before Stonewall were just having fun and having experiences and drama that wasn't based in coming out or suicide or getting jailed or fired from their jobs.
So your musical is based in 1963,
Correct.
right? And every single character in your musical is queer.
Yep, they're all gay.
And I wondered what led to that decision. You already talked a bit about it, but for us, it's so unusual to have anything on stage, anything in entertainment where every single character is queer, and it's really not. It's not part of the plot line. It's just this is the way they are. This is the story. But what led to that decision?
Well, I'm just gay with a capital G. And this play, even at the end of the run in October, I said to someone, I was like, this play is gay. I was like, this is a gay play. I mean, it's set in a gay bar.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes total sense that they're all just gay. And like, there was a point in which Mary Callanan's character, who is the main character's mother, Dorothy, who owns the bar, who owns the Jack of Hearts Club. There was a previous version where she was straight, but very, very accepting. And it just didn't work as well. Because when she had conflict with her daughter around the central story of Jack of Hearts Club is that Brittany Rolfe's character, Elizabeth, is born and raised here in Provincetown. Her girlfriend, Marissa Miller, asks Brittany's character to move to New York City at the end of the summer. And so we, the audience, are watching, does Brittany Rolfe's character, Elizabeth, stay in Provincetown where she's from, or does she move to New York City and go into the big scary world? One of the difficulties is her telling her mom that she's going to move to New York City, or talking to her mom about this big decision she has to make. And when the mom was a heterosexual woman, those nuances became way more muddled because it asked way more questions than I wanted to ask. But if the mother was also queer, if Mary's character was also queer, then the audience wasn't wrestling with like, is the mom being homophobic? Is the mom struggling to accept her daughter's identity? I didn't want to wrestle with any of those themes. So if the mom was a lesbian too, then it allowed for every character to be queer, and then their challenge with each other was not identity based or not based in sexuality. So there was a moment in which one character was straight, but I just changed her to become a lesbian. And people would ask, sometimes they'd be like, well, if she's a lesbian, why does she have a daughter? I'm like, I know a lot of lesbians who have daughters, so I don't know. She has a kid.
Yeah,
it's not.
They can still do that.
These things happen.
Yeah. Now, you named a few of the local performers who were in there, and it's, I mean, the amount of talent you gathered together for that play. You named Mary Callahan, Brittany Rolfe, Marissa Miller. There was also Mike Sullivan, Angela McDonough, João Santos, Peter Toto, Christopher Spalding. Did I miss anyone?
Nope.
And you had one guest performer from New York.
Well, James Jackson Jr. played Queena, and James lives in New York, and has been on Broadway, but he has been performing in Provincetown like forever. So he's sort of a known commodity here as well.
Well, it's so amazing that you're able to find all of these amazing voices here in town that can put a play that makes everybody cry to melt into puddles. I mean, the song by Peter Toto and Angela McDonough together at the end of the play, I'm getting emotional right now. It's just such a beautiful song, and same with the song that Brittany sings with Marissa Miller, that she's going to go live in the shadows.
Yeah.
Oh my God! Nobody in the audience was unaffected by this.
Oh.
They're such great songs.
Thank you so much. Thank you. The two songs that you mentioned are very special to me. You know, there's this one moment in which this couple, Peter Toto's character and Angela McDonough's character, are doing a kind of silly tap dancing number, because this musical goes in and out of songs that are a part of the performance that they're doing at the bar that night. And then there are songs in which they kind of break out of that paradigm and sing their feelings directly to us, the audience, in musical theater style. So we're playing with, sometimes they're singing to us, the audience, their kind of private feelings. And then other times they're performing um, numbers within the context of this fun little cabaret show that they're doing that night. And I was so lucky to have Angelo McDonough because I wrote that song specifically for his voice. I had worked with him at Broadway on the Beach. Delta Miles and I co-hosted Broadway on the Beach one summer. She knew Angelo, and when I heard his voice, I just fell so in love with it. And there's a great tradition in musical theater in which a character sings lyrics that we know they actually believe the opposite of. So, like someone who's a person who's struggling with poverty singing about how he's rich, or a person who, hates this character, but we know they're actually in love. Audiences kind of love that
Mm-hmm.
that juxtaposition. So I wrote a song for Angelo called The Happy Song, in which he just sings about how happy he is. But we know that he's miserable at the idea of having to leave his partner at the end of the summer. And
Because the story is that these two gay men in 1963, the only time they can be together and be a couple is for a short time in Provincetown every summer.
that's right.
But then at the end of the summer, they have to go back to their respective lives separately outside of Provincetown.
Yeah. And so Angelo just, as soon as I heard him sing that song, the first time he did it in a reading, everyone just wept. And sometimes I'm sitting there at the piano because I'm playing the whole score, and I have to just be like, John, like I will get emotional when he sings it as well.
Yeah.
And my dad's, the other song you mentioned was the duet that Marissa and Brittany sing. And that song, my dad came from Minnesota to see the play. My mom and dad both saw it. And my dad talks about how much he cried during that number, the two of them making a commitment to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that song is important to me because, as I mentioned, this isn't a show about how oppressed gay people were in the 60s. But that song, which is about choosing to have to live in the shadows in order to survive as a couple, which is what that song's about. There are a few moments, but that's really the only time that kind of I show as the writer that I'm aware that things were not easy. And it's a nice reminder of how far we've come in the midst of a show in which I really don't want to like wallow in the sadness of those things. But that song really, I think, showed the cost of being together
Mm-hmm.
And being a couple in that time.
I'm going to have to take a break now because I'm breaking up already. It was such an emotional play. But I was actually a bit sad because when your play was playing, I was thinking, oh no, I'm not going to be able to interview John in time for the play. But everything's changed now. Now our listeners, even though they didn't see it, maybe they didn't see it in the fall, they can now come back next summer because what do you have coming on next summer?
Yay. Well, toward the end of the run broke all kinds of records and sold very well. And the support for this show was unbelievably moving. The theater was so excited. And so in the last few weeks of the run, they asked us if we would do this production again as their main musical next summer. So this same play with the same cast will come back next summer.
Summer of 2026.
Yeah, summer of 26. We're going to remount the show. There'll be a tweak here and a tweak there just because, as a show gets developed, certain things change. But nothing major will change about it. But yeah, we're coming back next summer. I'm so excited.
Nobody's missed anything then, and that's the best part. You can all come back to Provincetown next year and get your tickets for the summer because it's going to sell out.
Oh
I mean, this fall, not only did it sell out, you had to add multiple performances.
We did, yeah. That was a wild when we added one performance in the middle of the run, and the theater said, "Okay, John, tickets are live. Could you go on your socials and announce that there's another show that they can buy tickets to? And 90 minutes after they went live with those tickets, it sold out completely. So I posted, and then within about a half hour of me posting, there were no tickets left. So I had to take it down, and we were just thrilled. Like
Yeah.
it was so special. I mean, what I felt, what really was so special for me, and what made me feel so good is, I think that it was a really wonderful theater experience for 110 people in that audience to sit there, and everyone was sort of connecting around a deep love for Provincetown, and everyone was sort of connecting to me and my love for Provincetown, and we all were sharing this idea of like, oh my gosh, you love this about that this is something that you love about Provincetown. I love this about Provincetown, and I didn't even know. Like a lot of the times that the audience would laugh was sort of this special catharsis of a shared recognition, and like, oh my gosh, you notice that about this town? Like, that's what I love about it too. And I could feel that happening so it was a wonderful story, and I'm so happy with how it all went, but I'm also happy that it created community. And the cast, we were all so in love with each other.
And you worked for a long time, because I went to multiple readings in the past years before the actual play. So you did readings and group sessions for like 3 years before you staged it, right?
Yeah, first reading was in the spring of 22, so almost 4 years ago. And that's how these musicals get made. You know, I think that there's this idea that a musical is made because like a composer lyricist, you know, goes out into the woods, writes a show, and comes back and it goes on a stage. But these are such challenging stories to tell. And there are so many characters, and you kind of need to fall in love with all of the characters. So every year that we did readings, so one reading in 22, one reading in 23, and then 3 readings in 2024, and then a reading and a workshop in a few months ago. You know, what I was finding is I wrote the script as well, and I realized at one point in the process, like, I can write something on paper that I think is funny. But if the audience doesn't laugh, then it, by definition, is not
That's
funny.
funny.
So that was so these learnings that you come away with from every reading, all these data points of like, oh, that really got a good laugh, or oh, Angelo's song, everyone felt affected by Angelo's song. Like, don't change it now. But this other scene, this other scene didn't work because the audience really started like moving in their seats, or looked at their programs, or started to kind of, obviously they weren't bought into this scene. So I need to rewrite this scene. You know, that's why these musicals take all these years to write, is because you have to get them in front of audiences as much as possible. And I love to rewrite, and I had an amazing team. Tom Curdahy and his team were so generous with this project as we were working on it. And I got to work with a fantastic director, Lita Hoffman, an amazing dramaturg, Sam Myers. And then every actor in the show was so committed to and so in love with their parts that it was a real collaboration between me and the actors to bring these characters to life. David Drake and Gary Garrison at the theater gave us just such an incredible home to play with these ideas. And then the whole creative team, like, it took 50 people to get this thing on stage. And also so grateful for Dan Silver, who was one of the co-producers on this project. And then we had a lot of very generous support from people in town who had, like you, seen a lot of these readings. And, we just were, it was beyond my wildest dreams. And I've been dreaming about this forever. So to be a part of this thing that really kind of like hit its mark, the way that it did was, I mean, it's every dream I've ever had come true. And now, about a month out, I'm still sort of in like the post-show blues. Like I'm a little like, Will I ever be happy again?
Well, let me throw you a curveball.
Okay.
Because, this podcast is about Provincetown, but I have listeners in California, in New York. I have listeners in Ireland, in Spain who listen on a regular basis.
Hello.
So is this ever going to be available on streaming services? Is there ever going to be a cast recording? Is it going to tour?
Yeah, we have all of those dreams. I mean, right now we're so focused on like one step at a time and focused on making sure that we continue to get it right. And this next production this summer is will require a lot. It's this run that we did here this fall was so special and wonderful, but it was just, 20 performances, and there'll be a lot more this coming summer. But we really want a cast recording, and that's a big to-do list item. And so I expect there will be in the next, hopefully, few months to a year, because people would leave and ask. I just went home to Minnesota, and my dad said to me as soon as I got home, he was like, "John, I've been singing all these songs for the last few weeks, but I don't know any of the words. So I need you to sit down and just play through the score." I was like, all right. So we need to get something out there.
Well, that would be great, because I think it has to reach, anybody who's interested in musical theater, not just about Provincetown, because it's really a masterpiece. And I give you all my congratulations for that.
That means so much. Even just talking about it, I love to talk about it.
And just now, you got 8 Broadway World Boston Award nominations.
We were very surprised and thrilled. These are awards that people can vote. Anyone can vote for. So obviously, we would love a vote if you saw the play and loved it, or didn't and just want to be nice. But yeah, we were so thrilled. Best musical, best new musical. Our director Lita Hoffman was nominated for best direction, best choreography.
Mary Callahan's
Mary
nominated.
Callanan. Yeah, so
Marissa Miller's nominated too.
Mary Callanan for best actress, and then Marissa Miller for best featured actress. And we're just thrilled. Like we saw these nominations come in, and I don't know how it works. Like it was just a wonderful surprise. And so we'll see how it happens. But yeah, you can go on BroadwayWorld.com/Boston, because these are regional, like almost like New England. It's all the theaters sort of in the greater Boston area. And so it's thrilling, and we're really excited.
So all our listeners, you now have to go to Broadway World, look it up online, and vote for the Jack of Hearts Club.
That's right. We would love that. And then Provincetown Theater is nominated for... Provincetown Theater has a few other nominations as well, and one of them is for favorite regional theater. And so we support... We love any support we can get.
So if you want to support John Richardson... in the upcoming weeks, we have the Sound of Music show. We have the Bing Crosby show. Next summer, we're going to have the Jack of Hearts Club again. Anything else we need to advertise? You have so much going on.
Oh, you've been more than generous. That kind of sums it up for now. I'm after this performance season, I'm gonna kind of like take a step back and be like, when do I do now?
Well, that's a good thing about the off season.
Exactly. That's why I love living here.
Yeah, we get this grace period in the winter where we can actually take a break.
Totally.
Yeah. Well, it has been a great pleasure to have you here. I'm so excited we're able to talk about the play, because it's going to come back. And I wish you all the success in the world.
I loved getting to talk to you, and I love that you're doing this. I think that it's so cool that you're doing these conversations from like this archival history. You have history in mind as you're making these, and you're talking to the coolest people. So it was an honor that you even asked me. I really appreciate
it. My pleasure. Well, we have history degrees. We have to use them, right?
We do.
Thank you, John, and thank you, everyone, for joining us. And remember, if you want to support us, you can go to buymeacoffee.com and look for the Art Colony podcast and send us a tip. Thank you so much.